All right, class. One of the things I wanted to discuss is something that's critical and important to the growth of your podcast. That would be making podcasts that are sticky, or at least get people to stay, and that are friction free, meaning that you are making it easy for people to stay and want to continue to listen. What does sticky mean? Listeners stay longer, they return regularly, they share your content, and they form habits around your show. For me, that example is This American Life. This American Life comes on WHRV 89.5 here on local public radio. And it's a great show. I love it. I listen to it every week. But I also collect it as a podcast because I want to re-listen to it. And it's got a lot of good reasons why it makes me return to it regularly and why don't mind listening to a whole hour. And I often share that content with other people. And I look forward to obviously listening to it on Saturday mornings at 12 noon and then, downloading it on Sunday afternoon when it's released. What do they do to make friction go away, to make it as friction free as possible? First, we should understand is that anything that makes it harder to listen makes it friction. If there's a confusing format, if the audio quality is not good, if it starts slow or too many ads, and there's a lack of clarity as to what we're trying to cover during this particular show, it's got a lot of friction, and I don't want those things. So audio quality is important. To reduce friction, here it is. Simplicity equals retention. Make your program simple and easy to follow. Make it easy for them to press play on it. Make it easy for them to stay, and make it easy for them to come back. So some of those things, simplicity. You know that you're going to have a show and it's going to be about the marching band, for instance. You want to give them a good reason to press play. I think while there's an opportunity to provide detailed descriptions about your show, I believe it makes it easier for listeners to press play when you give them a very simple and easy to understand description that is 1 to 2 sentences. More than that, I feel like people will typically tune out. Make it easy to stay. And we'll talk about that in a moment where we talk about giving them a good hook. Make it easy to come back. Give them a preview, if at all possible, of the next episode. Let them know when that episode is coming out and let them know where they can find it. Making it easy for them to stay. In the first 30 seconds, you want to give them a great hook. Hook immediately. State value clearly and avoid long intros. In the first 30 seconds, how I typically like to start a show is I ask a pointed question. It's usually something for the listener to think about that would drive them to want to answer that question themselves. For instance, have you ever wondered what it's like to play tuba in one of the best marching bands in all the land? That's the hook. They say, oh, I've never heard that. I've never thought of that. And then you say, so you follow that up with, well, I'm speaking with Joe Blow, who's the first tuba in the NSU Marching Spartan Legion. They are the best. There's the value. And he is going to teach you everything he goes through in a week when he's preparing for a game. And if you can get that all kind of ironed out in that first 30 seconds, then you go into stay with us. We'll be back in a moment with more. And people will say, well, yes, I think I should listen because I want to know what it's like to be a part of a marching band or whatever the content may be. Here are some other examples. A bad example is welcome to the show, right? People have already tuned into the show, so welcoming them to a show is redundant. But a better example would be on today's show or today we're going to is active. Today we are, that is an active verb. Going to, expose how, explain why, talk to, whatever those things are, we're going to get right to the point with a very active, not passive, a very active statement. And we want to, I believe, always try to pique their curiosity by making them understand that they're going to get something that they may not get elsewhere. Stickiness as a structure, or structure can equal stickiness. Listeners know what's coming. They have already kind of digested your content. You've given them a predictable format. They recognize when segments start and end. They are sequential and chronological, so that means there's a clear flow. And then listeners will then know what's coming. The format will be predictable. The segments will continue to follow. You'll have a clear flow. And as you can see, it is a circle that continues to repeat itself. Here's a very important piece. Audio quality matters. Clean, balanced sound is important. Minimizing background noise, keeping consistent levels. These things make your podcast sound credible, important, and it's sticky, meaning it's easy for people to stay. Challenging audio with competing background noises that overpower the microphone will not work. Bad audio equals instant drop off. Some other things that are important: pacing and editing. I can tell you what I've noticed. When I go to, say, for instance, just a TikTok video, if they can't get me in the first 15 seconds, I'm swiping. So you have to remember, listeners have the opportunity to swipe immediately, to hit the fast forward button, to skip over. So you want to respect the listener's time, give them that great hook, and then you want to remove any additional dead space. If there's not something there pulling me in, keeping me there, I'm out. Now, there are times when pregnant pauses are important to help deliver the story, but dead space that doesn't have any good meaning has to be removed. You want to cut all your filler words if at all possible. Now, I don't want you to have a podcast that's so perfect that it's not personal, but and excessive, I think you understand what I'm talking. Those things can be filler words that are no good. Keep the energy high. Make sure that you're not just kind of trailing off. If a half-hour podcast is for you, you'll have to keep your energy up for a half hour. If you're trying to do an hour, but you don't think that you can talk for an hour with good energy and deliver great pacing, then you need to find a shorter podcast. If you have interviews and your guest is not delivering what it is that you're asking them to deliver for you as far as their energy, you have to have a conversation with that guest to try to reel that back in and keep the energy high. You want to respect the listener's time by removing dead space, cutting filler words, and keeping the energy high. As you can see, it will feed on itself. Now, again, we've had this conversation before in the semester. You want content that hooks. It starts with good storytelling, conflict and resolution, relatable topics, and stories that keep brains engaged. So storytelling, again, have you ever wondered what it's like to be in a marching band? Well, today we're going to discuss that. I'm going to tell you a story of a young man who's in a marching band, and in fact, you're going to hear from him. Maybe you have the kind of podcast that requires some conflict and resolution. Have you ever had an opportunity to make a tough decision? The tough decision is where the conflict starts to begin. Well, let me tell you a story about a time where I was quitting one job and taking a new job, but I had to tell my boss, who was a very good friend of mine, I was going to have to leave. There's conflict there. Those are also relatable topics. Many of us have been in scenarios where we've had to quit a job or break up with a lover or tell a friend that we no longer wanted to be friends. And those kinds of stories are those that will keep people engaged and hooked. You also want to build trust. You want to create loyalty. You want to make listeners feel seen. And you will find that people will stay for people. Meaning, when you're real and authentic, people will stay to listen to real and authentic people. That is the power of personal connection. So make certain that you give a little bit of you when you do these types of programs. Give people an opportunity to feel like they have a reason to follow you, and then make them feel seen. How can you make listeners feel seen? You can invite their comment. You can read their letters or their emails in your upcoming episodes. And again, real people will stay for real people. Be authentic. Again, share your personal stories, use a conversational tone, and speak directly to your listeners and with your listeners, and try not to speak at your listeners. How does that sound? When you speak with your listeners, you'll say things like, you've probably experienced that. Or you'll say things about, had you wondered these things? You'll say things that will get them to understand the role that the story that you're telling has played out in their life previously. When you speak at people, you're not speaking directly to individuals, but you're literally talking about the theys of the world. For instance, people often do, or people find themselves doing this or that or the other thing. Those are the theys. I don't want to really get this to be political, but a handful of people in this world often speak in theys. Donald Trump, for instance, always says, they're saying this about me. Theys are so vague. We don't know who they are. You can blame anything on they. They're saying this. Somebody did that. No, try to focus this on the listener. Try to focus it on the listener by making it personal. The habit of consistency will create stickiness. Have a reliable release schedule, use a familiar tone, and give the same value every time out the gate. If you can say, I'm releasing every Monday or every Thursday, that will help create stickiness. That's the same release schedule. The familiar tone is how you speak with your listeners. Some of the things that go into a familiar tone are intro music. If you start with the have you ever wondered kind of questions, then that will be the beginning of your show each and every time. If you'd like to start with things that either pose a question or immediately create controversy in the listener's mind, those kinds of things are always reliable, and that creates a reliable value position and it drives stickiness. Make your listeners a part of the show. Have a call to action. Ask them for engagement. We've been talking for a while, and I really like to know what you all think about this. In the comments, go down and share with me times when you have tried to bake a cake and it failed. That's asking for engagement, and it's encouraging the sharing. It also allows for feedback. And the main part is this call to action will make the listeners a part of the show. Some other ways that you should minimize friction is you want to have friction-free distribution. Make your podcast available on all platforms. Use simple titles and descriptions and easy access links. You want to remove barriers to entry. Now, this is, for me, somewhat controversial. I like that the podcast can be available on multiple platforms, but I try to market a limited number of platforms. I don't want to spend time marketing and promoting that it's available in Apple Music and Apple Podcasts and Amazon Music and Spotify and iHeart and Deezer and Ghana and SoundCloud. That laundry list of places makes it difficult for people who are currently listening or want to follow to make a decision as to where they should get the podcast best. That laundry list is great for people who are discovering your podcast, but people who are on your podcast, I like to market to people that I'm available through Apple Podcasts, iHeart, and Spotify. These are the areas that they're most often available. And once you have some distribution, platforms like Dovetail, which is literally just a distribution platform that sends the podcast out to many places, will tell you where people are visiting or receiving your podcast most often. It will tell you things like, people are most often using your podcast on an iOS device or at a computer, or they're getting it from TuneIn or Spotify or what have you. And that makes it easier for you to kind of focus the marketing. Now, people will discover you in weird places, like they'll discover you in Amazon Music, And somewhere in the podcast, you'll say something along the lines of, if you'd like to follow us, you can do so here or through the Apple Podcast app or on iHeart or Spotify. Please subscribe. Let's get a quick little recap here. Start in the beginning with a great hook in the first 30 seconds. Have you ever wondered why some people turn left and some people turn right? Today, we're going to discuss that. That's my hook, and that hook is active. It asks a question and piques the interest, and then it immediately goes into active. Today, we're going to do X. Reduce friction. There are lots of ways to reduce friction. You want to make certain that you have great audio. You want to make certain that you have compelling content. You want to make sure that it's available in places where people can get, and you want to make sure you have a reliable release schedule. Tell great stories. Those stories focus the things that you experience in your life or the life of the people you're interviewing, and they create a connection to people who are listening by speaking directly to them. And those stories will help build a personal connection. Connection equals retention. Retention is stickiness. Those are the things that you want to try to do. Be authentic, be yourself, and make certain that you are including listeners in the journey. If you do those things, you'll have success.